The night was quiet in the forests of northern Canada. A cold wind passed through the trees, shaking the leaves softly. The stars above were bright, untouched by city lights. Then, without warning, the sky lit up. A silver streak of light moved across the sky. It was silent. No sound, no roar. The animals in the forest paused. Birds flew from their trees, sensing something strange. The light grew brighter as it came down, finally landing in a small clearing. There was a soft hum, and then silence again. From the glowing craft, a figure stepped out. She was tall and graceful, her skin smooth and silver like metal. Her eyes glowed softly in the dark. She wore no armor, only a simple robe made of a material that shimmered like water. Her name was Valara, and she was not from Earth. Valara had come from a far world, Nepheri. Her people were once many, but now they were nearly gone. A war with a cruel alien race had destroyed most of them. Valara was one of the last. She was a widow. Her mate had died in the final battle, and with him, their hopes for the future. But there was still one hope. Valara carried inside her the beginning of new life, a child. It was not yet born. It was only a small spark, a seed of her late mate's DNA. But it was incomplete. To grow, it needed something more, something only found in one place: human blood. The humans did not know it, but long ago their blood had been touched by stars. Their DNA held a key, something ancient and rare. Valara's. People had studied it before, but never tried to use it. Now it was her only chance. She looked up at the stars once more, then down at the forest around her. "I'm here," she said softly, her voice like a gentle breeze. "Now I must find him." Valara touched a small device on her wrist. A faint blue light covered her body. In seconds, her silver skin faded into a soft, human-like tone. Her glowing eyes turned brown, and her robe shifted into a warm coat and jeans. She looked like a young woman, maybe 30 years old, with short black hair and calm eyes. Her ship, small and quiet, melted into the ground like it had never been there, hidden. Valara walked into the forest, each step quiet, each movement smooth. She had studied Earth's language, its people, its cities. She knew how to hide. She had one goal: to find a human with the right blood. A man who could complete the child's life. Not just any human. It had to be one with the ancient code, still strong in his DNA. She had scanned the planet before landing. One place showed a strange signal. Not from a machine, but from a person. A human man who lived far from cities, alone and completely off-grid. The signal from his body was strong, exactly what she needed. His name was Marin. Valara did not know yet if Marin would help her. Humans were known for fear, for confusion, but also for kindness. She hoped he was the last kind. As she walked toward the road, she passed a rabbit. It stared at her, unafraid. She gave it a gentle smile. "You still have peace," she whispered. By morning, she would reach a small town nearby. From there, she would track Marin's signal and begin her mission. She had traveled across stars, risked death, left behind everything, all for a child not yet born. Valara walked into the small town just after sunrise. The streets were quiet. Only a few early risers were out. An old man sweeping his shop entrance, a woman walking her dog, and a group of kids waiting for a school bus. No one looked twice at her. To them, she was just another traveler passing through. She moved calmly, scanning her surroundings with sharp eyes. Hidden in her ear was a small device. It hummed softly, picking up the signal she had tracked from space. The unique human blood pattern. The signal was faint now, but still there. It pointed northwest beyond the town, deeper into the wild. She stopped at a local store. Inside, the air smelled like wood, coffee, and something fried. Valara walked to the counter. Behind it stood a middle-aged woman with curly red hair and a warm smile. "Can I help you, dear?" the woman asked. "Yes," Valara said, her voice smooth but practiced. "I'm looking for someone who lives off the grid, a man named Maren. Do you know him?" The woman's smile faded slightly. She looked Valara up and down, trying to decide if she could be trusted. "Maren doesn't get many visitors," she said carefully. "He lives up past Ridge Lake, alone for almost 10 years, doesn't like company." "I understand," Valara said. "I'm a researcher. I believe he might be able to help me." The woman still looked unsure but nodded. "You'll need a map or a strong GPS. Roads out there aren't friendly." Valara smiled. "Thank you." She bought a paper map to avoid using any digital tools. Then she left the shop, already planning her route. As she followed the forest path, Valara thought about what she had learned of humans. Their blood was simple in many ways, but within that simplicity was something powerful, an echo of ancient life, something once connected to stars and energy far beyond this galaxy. Long ago, during the early age of Earth, a broken Nephiran ship had crashed here. Its engine leaked strange particles into the land and water. Those particles slowly mixed with Earth's nature and humans. Now, thousands of years later, some humans still carried traces of that power in their blood. Maren was one of them. Valara hiked for hours. The sky turned gray, and soft rain began to fall. Trees grew thicker, and the signal from her tracker grew stronger. She was getting close. As she reached the edge of a ridge, she saw it, a small cabin built from dark wood, surrounded by trees. Smoke rose from a chimney. The place looked simple, but she could feel a protective shield hidden in the air. Maren had tech, alien tech, though he likely didn't know where it came from. Valara stepped forward, but the ground beneath her buzzed. A faint blue shimmer lit up in front of her. A barrier. She stopped. Inside the cabin, a man stood from his desk. He looked out the window. Tall, lean, with short brown hair and quiet eyes, Maren stared at the stranger outside his home. He opened the door slowly. "You're not from around here," he said. Valara didn't lie. "No, I came to find you." Maren frowned. "Why?" "You carry something rare," she said. "Something in your blood. I need it to save a life." He raised an eyebrow. "What kind of life?" "A child," Valara said gently. "One not yet born." For a moment neither spoke. Then Maren said, "Come inside. You have a lot to explain." Valara stepped forward. The barrier faded. She had passed the first test. The real challenge was just beginning. Inside the small, dimly lit cabin, the scent of burning wood mixed with the smell of fresh tea. A fire crackled in the hearth, its warm glow reflecting off the rustic wooden furniture. Maren motioned for Valara to sit at the small table near the window. She did as he asked, her movements smooth and deliberate. She had been through many strange lands, many different worlds, but Earth's simple charm still surprised her. It was the quiet beauty of it all, the calm that existed even in the most untamed places. And this cabin, far from civilization, was the perfect hiding spot. Maren poured tea from a small kettle, his movements cautious but not unfriendly. He had studied her since she arrived. There was something different about her, something not quite human, though her appearance suggested otherwise. Her eyes too bright, too clear, her skin too smooth, like polished metal, and the way she moved, every step measured, as if she knew exactly where to go. He sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "You're asking for my blood. You've got my attention. But I don't know what you mean by a child." "What kind of child?" Valara took a deep breath, her eyes locking onto his. She hadn't expected this to be easy. She hadn't expected any of it to be easy. But there was no turning back now. Not just any child, she said, her voice low. This child is special. She will carry the future of two worlds. Maren frowned. Two worlds? What are you talking about? Valara shifted in her seat, leaning forward. I am from Neferai. My people, we were defeated by an enemy called the Dravari. They destroyed our cities, our ships. They killed my mate. She paused, her eyes darkening as the memory of loss flickered within her. I am the last of my kind. But before he died, my mate and I, we created something. A child. But she is not fully formed. Her DNA, her bloodline, is incomplete. Maren stayed silent, watching her carefully. So, you want me to father a child for you? He asked slowly, not sure if he was understanding correctly. Valara nodded. Yes, your blood carries the right spark. The Dravari have hunted us for centuries, but if this child can be born, she can stop them. She can save my people, save both of our species. Maren ran a hand through his hair, leaning back in his chair. This was more than he expected, more than he understood. He had been living alone for years, keeping to himself, studying the earth in his own way. He never imagined anything like this. You're asking a lot, he said, his voice quieter now. And you haven't told me what's in it for me. What makes you think I'll agree to this? Valara's eyes softened. She wasn't used to pleading, but she knew she had to try. I don't expect you to do this out of kindness, she said. I understand your hesitation, but this is about survival. If the Dravari find me, or this child, they will destroy us both. I'm asking for your help, but also your trust. If you help me, if you help her, you will be part of something bigger than anything you've ever known. Maren didn't answer right away. He was thinking, weighing the possibilities. A part of him wanted to turn away, to tell her this was insane. But another part, one he had buried long ago, was curious, was fascinated by her words, her conviction. There was something in her that made him want to believe. You're serious, he said finally. You really think this child can save the two of us? Valara nodded. I believe it. My people's technology, combined with Earth's bloodlines, can stop the Dravari. But only if we can complete the child. She will be the bridge. Maren felt a strange pull in his chest. He had lived alone for so long. The idea of being part of something greater, something that could change the fate of entire worlds, was overwhelming. It was also dangerous. He didn't know how to trust her, or even how to trust himself in this situation. But he knew one thing for certain. This was no ordinary request, and he had never been the type to turn away from the unknown. He stood up from his chair and walked to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked landscape. His mind raced. All right, he said, turning back to face her. I'll help, but on my terms. Valara's eyes glowed softly in the dim light. She nodded, the faintest smile touching her lips. What are your terms? First, Maren said, you'll stay here, no more running. You'll tell me everything. You know about this child. I need to understand what I'm getting into. Valara agreed, her face serious. Of course. Second, he continued, we do this my way. I don't know what your alien technology is, but I'm not letting anyone just poke around with my DNA. Valara smiled fully now. Agreed. Maren nodded. It was done. And with that, they both knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days passed slowly in Maren's cabin. The rain had stopped, and the sun had begun to shine through the mist that hung in the trees. But inside, the atmosphere was heavy. The two of them were bound by a strange agreement, and neither knew quite where it would lead. Valara had kept her word, staying inside and sharing all the information she could about her mission, her species, and the child they hoped to create. Marin listened carefully. He had always been a man of science, and he tried to look at things logically. But what Valara spoke of was unlike anything he had ever studied. Alien technology, hybrid DNA, a child who could save 2 worlds. It all sounded impossible, yet her presence, the way she moved, the way she spoke, made him believe. She wasn't lying. This was real. Still, his mind wrestled with doubts. Was he making the right choice? Would helping her be the right thing for humanity? And what about his own safety? One evening, while they were sitting in the small living room, a strange hum filled the air. Valara's head snapped up, her senses alert. She stood, moving toward the window without a word. Marin watched her, sensing the tension in her movements. What's happening? Valara's face was a mask of concentration. There's something in the air. A signal, a presence. Marin's heart skipped. Is it the Dravari? Are they here? I don't know, Valara answered, her voice calm but serious. But it's not a good sign. Just as she finished speaking, the hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. The air itself felt thick, as if the whole cabin was being watched. Valara moved quickly to a hidden compartment near the wall, pulling out a small device, her personal weapon. It was sleek and silent, its design foreign but effective. I need to get you to safety, she said, her eyes sharp. Stay here. Don't make any noise, I'll handle this. Marin's pulse quickened. Wait, you're going out there alone. I have to, she said, her voice firm. If they find us, they will destroy everything. I'll be able to protect you, but you need to stay out of sight. Before Marin could protest, Valara was already at the door. She glanced back at him once, her eyes softening for just a moment. Trust me. And then she was gone. Marin stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. He didn't know what to do. He had promised to help her, but he wasn't prepared for this. What if the Dravari were already here? What if they found him too? His thoughts spiraled, but he knew there was no time to waste. He grabbed a flashlight and headed for the back door, hoping to find a way to help without getting himself killed. Outside, the forest was eerily still. The hum had stopped, but something lingered in the air. Marin's eyes darted between the trees, every shadow suddenly feeling like a threat. He knew Valara could handle herself. She was not human after all, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. A movement caught his eye, a figure slipping between the trees. He froze. Was it Valara? No, it wasn't her. It was another alien. The creature was tall, with a dark, imposing frame. It moved quickly, its presence cold, calculating. It was wearing no disguise, no human form like Valara. The Dravari had arrived. Marin's heart raced. The Dravari were known for their cruelty, their obsession with exterminating any race they considered weak. He had heard stories, but seeing one in person was something else entirely. The alien moved silently, its eyes scanning the area, its every step deliberate. It wasn't here by chance. It was hunting. Marin's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't outrun it, he couldn't fight it, but he could hide. He backed away, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature had already passed, moving deeper into the forest. Marin had no idea where it was going, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let it find Valara. He turned and sprinted back to the cabin, his mind focused on one goal, to warn her. But as he reached the door, he stopped short. Valara was standing there, her eyes wide with concern but calm. They've come, she said, her voice low. Marin nodded. I saw one, a Dravari. Valara didn't flinch. Instead, she grabbed his arm and pulled him inside quickly. We have no time. They won't stop until they've found us. We need to move. Now. Maren didn't argue. He didn't have the luxury of time. Velara had said she could protect them, but it was clear that the situation was more dangerous than either of them had imagined. Together, they ran into the forest, knowing the Dravari were close behind. The hunt had begun. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Velara and Maren moved swiftly through the trees, each step calculated, their breaths heavy but controlled. The Dravari were close, and they had no time to lose. Every crack of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a sharp warning through their nerves. The sound of their pursuers was faint but unmistakable, a low hum, a vibration that seemed to come from the earth itself. Maren's heart raced as he followed Velara, who led the way with a quiet determination. He had no idea where they were going, but he trusted her. He had to. There was no other choice. "Where are we headed?" Maren asked, his voice low as he kept pace. "To the caves," Velara replied without turning. "They're hidden. Safe." Maren nodded, though he didn't fully understand. He had never been to these parts of the forest, but Velara had a sense of urgency he couldn't ignore. Whatever these caves were, they had to be their only chance. The path grew steeper as they climbed. A ridge and the trees began to thin. The ground underfoot was uneven, and Maren struggled to keep his footing as he followed Velara, who moved with ease. He glanced over his shoulder, but the forest seemed to be swallowing them whole. The Dravari were still out there, but they were not in sight yet. "Are you sure they'll be fooled?" Maren asked, his voice tinged with worry. Velara didn't answer immediately. She led him to a cluster of large rocks, their surfaces rough and covered in moss. She stopped in front of a narrow opening in the stone, almost invisible against the natural backdrop. "This way," she said, stepping inside the small gap. "The entrance is hidden, but it won't stay that way for long." Maren hesitated for a moment, but then followed her into the darkness. The cave was cold, the air thick with the smell of earth and stone. Inside, the walls were damp and the ground uneven, but there was a strange, calming stillness to the place. Velara moved confidently through the narrow tunnel, her eyes glowing, faintly in the dark. "Stay close," she warned as they walked deeper into the cave. Maren nodded, his senses heightened. He couldn't shake the feeling that danger was close, that it was just beyond the walls of the cave. The hum of the Dravari's presence had faded, but it still hung in the air like a shadow. As they walked, Velara explained more about the caves. "They are ancient," she said. "Used by my people long ago for hiding and protection. Only a few of us know where they are. The Dravari can't track us here, not easily." Maren didn't fully understand how this place could be so safe, but he trusted her. She had proven she knew what she was doing. He just hoped it would be enough. They reached a small chamber deep inside the cave. The walls were smooth and the ceiling was high, giving the room an open, airy feeling despite its isolation. Velara turned to face him. "We need to stay here for now," she said. "I'll set up a shield to hide our presence. It won't last forever, but it will give us time." Maren nodded and leaned against the wall, his mind racing. "Do you really think you can make the child survive?" he asked quietly. The question had been on his mind for a while, and he couldn't ignore it any longer. Velara didn't hesitate. "I will make sure she is born. I will give her everything she needs to thrive." Her words were firm, confident, but there was a sadness in her eyes. Maren had seen it before, the weight of loss that lingered even in her strength. She had lost everything. Her people, her mate, and now she was asking him for help to create a future. The responsibility weighed heavily on her, but she carried it without complaint. "We'll make it through this," she added, more to herself than to him. "I won't let the Dravari take her." Maren stayed silent for a moment, thinking about her words. He didn't fully understand what was at stake, but he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't turn back now. They were in this together, whether he was ready or not. Just then, a low growl echoed from the entrance of the cave. Valara tensed, her senses sharp. "They've found us," she whispered. Marin's heart skipped a beat. He had hoped the shield would hold longer, but it seemed the Dravari had already breached it. The hum from earlier returned, louder now and closer. "We need to move," Valara said, her voice steady. "Quickly." They turned and made their way back toward the tunnel entrance, but before they could take more than a few steps, the ground shook. Rocks fell from above, blocking the path ahead. Marin's heart raced as he turned to Valara. "What now?" Valara's eyes were full of determination. "We fight." The ground trembled beneath their feet as rocks tumbled down, sealing off the narrow tunnel they had just traveled through. The faint hum from the Dravari's presence grew louder, like a growl in the distance, and Valara's eyes flashed with intensity. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice steady, but there was a flicker of urgency in her eyes. "The Dravari are close." Marin glanced around the cave, his mind racing. The small chamber they had found refuge in was no longer a safe haven. The walls, once comforting and ancient, now felt like they were closing in on them. He could feel the air growing thicker, heavier, as if the very stones were aware of the danger outside. "Can we hide?" he asked, trying to remain calm, though the pressure of the situation was starting to get to him. Valara shook her head. "Not for long. The Dravari have technology that can pierce through shields. They will find us. We need to defend ourselves." She moved quickly, her hands pulling items from a bag hidden in her jacket. Marin watched as she set up a small device near the entrance of the cave. It looked simple, but he knew better than to question her actions. Everything she did had purpose. "You've been preparing for this," Marin said, his voice tinged with a mixture of awe and fear. Valara paused, for a moment her eyes meeting his. "I was prepared for this moment the day I arrived on Earth. The Dravari will stop at nothing to destroy me and the child, but they won't succeed." Her words had an edge of finality to them, and for a moment Marin believed her. He didn't fully understand the science or the technology, but he could feel the determination in her voice, and it was contagious. "What do you need me to do?" Marin asked, stepping forward. He had no experience with combat, but he wasn't going to sit by and do nothing. Valara didn't hesitate. "Stay alert. If they breach the entrance, I'll handle them, but you need to be ready to help if it comes to that." Marin nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know how he could help, but he would try. This was bigger than him. This was about survival, not just for him, but for the future. The minutes stretched on like hours. The sound of the Dravari's hum grew louder, closer. Marin's grip tightened around a small rock he had picked up, though he had no idea what good it would do. He was not a fighter. But Valara's calm made him feel like he could do anything. And then it happened. A sudden sharp crack echoed through the cave as the entrance began to glow. A blue light, shimmering and pulsing, surrounded the opening, cutting through the darkness like a blade. Marin's breath caught in his throat. "They're here," Valara whispered. Her voice was low, almost reverent, as she stepped forward and activated the device she had set up earlier. The ground vibrated again, but this time it wasn't from the Dravari. It was something Valara had triggered. Some kind of shield, a wall of energy that flickered and crackled around them. But it wasn't enough. The entrance exploded in a flash of blue and white light as a Dravari soldier appeared, towering and menacing. Its skin was dark, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The creature stepped forward, its movements fluid, calculating. It was a hunter, and they were its prey. Valara reacted instantly. With a swift motion, she raised her weapon, a sleek metallic staff, and charged at the Dravari soldier. The energy from her weapon crackled in the air, cutting through the silence of the cave like a knife. The Dravari soldier swung its own weapon, a sharp, jagged blade in an arc. But Valara was faster. She dodged the strike and countered with a powerful blow to the creature's chest. It stumbled back, its glowing eyes narrowing with fury. Maren watched in awe as Valara moved with speed and precision. She was not human, that much was clear. But the way she fought, so graceful, so powerful, it reminded him of something ancient, something primal. She was a warrior, and she was fighting for their survival. The Dravari soldier growled and lunged. Again, this time more viciously. Valara parried the attack, her staff clashing against the alien blade. Sparks flew, and the sound of metal on metal rang in the cave. Maren's pulse raced. He could see that Valara was holding her own, but the Dravari soldier was stronger, larger. He knew they couldn't keep this up for long. The creature was relentless. Without thinking, Maren picked up the rock he had been holding and threw it toward the Dravari soldier. It wasn't much, but it distracted the creature for a split second. That was all Valara needed. She struck with a final, precise blow to the soldier's chest, sending it crashing to the ground in a heap. Valara stood over the fallen creature, her breath heavy but steady. The battle was over. For now. "We're not safe yet," she said, her voice firm. Maren nodded, his heart still racing. They had survived the first attack, but they both knew it was just the beginning. The Dravari wouldn't stop until they had finished what they came for. And now they were fighting for more than just their lives. They were fighting for the future. The cave was silent, the tension hanging in the air like a storm before it broke. The fallen Dravari soldier lay motionless on the ground, its dark form twisted in defeat. Valara stood over it for a moment, her weapon still in hand, her chest rising and falling with each steady breath. Her expression was hard, her eyes sharp, scanning the cave entrance for any signs of more enemies. Maren's mind raced. The Dravari had come so close to ending their lives, but they had survived. Barely. He glanced at Valara, who seemed unaffected by the battle. She was calm, focused. But he could see the strain in her movements, the exhaustion in her eyes. This fight had taken its toll on her, even if she didn't show it. "They'll come back," Maren said, his voice low. "They won't stop." Valara nodded, her face grim. "You're right. The Dravari won't give up. They'll bring reinforcements." Maren's heart sank. He knew the danger wasn't over. It felt like they were trapped in a never-ending cycle of running and fighting. Every moment of safety seemed temporary, fleeting. "What do we do now?" Maren asked, his voice tinged with desperation. "Where can we go? They know where we are." Valara paused, her gaze distant as she thought. She took a deep breath and looked back at Maren. "There's a place," she said quietly, "a hidden facility. It's far from here. It's the last place they would think to search." Maren frowned. "How do we get there? The Dravari are already on our trail. It's too risky." Valara's eyes locked with his. "It's our only chance. If we stay here, we'll be cornered. If we run, we might make it to the facility in time." Maren felt the weight of her words. There was no other choice. The Dravari would keep hunting them down until they had what they wanted. The only way to survive was to run, and hope that they could reach the hidden facility before it was too late. "We have to go," Valara said, already moving toward the back of the cave. Maren followed, his mind spinning with uncertainty. Though forest was a dangerous place, and the Dravari were relentless. But they had no time to waste. He trusted Valara's instincts. She had survived far more than he ever could have imagined. If anyone knew how to escape, it was her. The two of them moved quickly through the winding tunnels of the cave, avoiding the main entrance. Valara led the way, her movement sure and swift. Maren followed closely behind, trying to keep up, despite the growing fatigue in his legs. As they emerged from the caves, the fresh air hit Maren's face. The world outside was still, the trees towering above them in silence. There was no sign of the Dravari yet, but they knew the hunt was far from over. "We need to stay low," Valara whispered. "Move quietly. Don't let them see us." Maren nodded, his instincts kicking in. They slipped into the shadows of the forest, moving as quietly as they could through the dense underbrush. The path ahead was treacherous, but Valara navigated it with ease, her senses attuned to every sound, every movement in the trees. As they pressed on, Maren couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. He had never been in a situation like this before, running for his life, hunted by a force he couldn't even begin to understand. He had always been a man of logic, of science, but this was something else entirely. This was survival. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to stretch on forever. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the path. Maren's legs were sore, and his mind felt foggy with exhaustion. But they couldn't stop. Not now. Valara led them to a small clearing where a narrow stream ran quietly through the grass. She paused, listening intently. "Something's not right," she said, her voice tense. "We're not alone." Maren froze. His senses were on high alert, but all he could hear was the soft rush of the water and the rustling of leaves in the wind. Then a sound, something low, a hum, echoed from the trees. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, closer. "The Dravari," Valara said, her eyes narrowing. "They've found us." Panic surged through Maren's chest. They couldn't outrun them anymore. The Dravari were too fast, too relentless. Valara had said they had a plan, but he couldn't see how they could escape now. "We need to make a stand," Valara said, turning toward him with a determined look in her eyes. "This is our chance. If we can take them down here, we'll have time to reach the facility." Maren felt a cold chill run through him. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for this kind of fight, but he wasn't going to let Valara face this alone. "I'm with you," he said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. The sound of the Dravari's hum grew louder, and then through the trees they appeared. 3 of them, there, dark forms emerging from the shadows. Their glowing eyes locked onto Valara and Maren, and the hunt began once again. The 3 Dravari emerged from the trees like shadows, their dark forms towering and menacing. Their glowing eyes locked onto Valara and Maren, and for a moment the forest seemed to hold its breath. The air was thick with tension, every leaf, every branch trembling under the weight of the approaching danger. Valara didn't move at first. She stood still, her eyes calculating as she assessed the Dravari. Maren could feel her energy building, the calm before the storm. She had fought before, many times, but this time it was different. This wasn't just survival, this was the last chance to escape. "We have to fight," Valara said quietly, her voice steady. She turned to Maren, her expression fierce. "Stay close. Don't try to be a hero. I'll handle them." Maren nodded, but deep down a wave of fear washed over him. He had no training, no experience with anything like this. He was just a man trying to survive, trying to protect a child he barely understood. But the look in Valara's eyes told him there was no turning back. The first Dravari charged, its feet crashing against the earth as it closed the distance between them in an instant. Valara was faster, moving with fluid grace as she raised her weapon, a sleek silver staff that hummed with energy. She swung it with precision, deflecting the Dravari's strike with ease. The creature growled, its eyes flashing with fury as it lunged again. Marin's heart raced as he watched the battle unfold before him. The Dravari were powerful, but Valara was something else. She fought with a ferocity that was almost unnatural. Each move deliberate, each strike calculated. She wasn't just defending herself. She was taking control. But even as Valara fought with everything she had, Marin could see the fatigue in her movements. The Dravari were relentless, and they were getting stronger, more aggressive with each passing second. It was only a matter of time before one of them got past her. Then the second Dravari attacked. It moved with terrifying speed, its blade slashing through the air like a whip. Valara barely managed to dodge, her staff narrowly missing the creature's strike. She countered quickly, but the Dravari was relentless. The sound of metal on metal echoed through the clearing as they clashed. Marin couldn't just stand there anymore. He had to do something. His eyes darted around the clearing, searching for anything that could help. And then he saw it. A large rock, sharp and jagged just a few feet away. Without thinking, he grabbed it, his fingers wrapped tightly around its rough edges. He wasn't sure what he was planning to do, but he knew he had to act fast. The third Dravari appeared behind Valara, moving in for a surprise attack. Marin's heart skipped a beat as he saw the creature's weapon raised high, aiming for her back. Without thinking, he hurled the rock with all his strength, hitting the Dravari square in the chest. The creature stumbled, momentarily thrown off balance. It hissed in anger, its glowing eyes narrowing as it turned toward Marin. But Valara didn't miss the opportunity. With a quick, fluid motion, she swung her staff, delivering a crushing blow to the Dravari's head. The creature crumpled to the ground, motionless. Marin stood frozen, his chest heaving with the shock of what had just happened. He had actually done something. He had helped, but the fight wasn't over. The first Dravari was still on its feet, and now it was angrier than ever. It lunged again, its blade slashing through the air, aiming for Valara's throat. Marin's instincts kicked in. He grabbed another rock, throwing it toward the creature. This time, he aimed for its legs. The stone hit its target, and the Dravari stumbled, its foot caught on the ground. Valara took advantage of the moment, striking the creature's midsection with a powerful blow. The Dravari let out a final roar before collapsing, defeated. Marin's breath came in sharp gasps as he looked around. Two of the Dravari were down, but the last one was still standing, its eyes burning with fury. It was stronger than the others, its movements more calculated, its strikes faster. Valara was exhausted, but she was still determined. "We end this now," she said, her voice low and steady. With a burst of energy, Valara charged at the final Dravari, her staff crackling with power. The Dravari met her head-on, its weapon raised high. They clashed in a violent explosion of force, their weapons locked together as they struggled for control. The ground beneath them shook with the intensity of the battle. Marin watched, unable to help. He knew this was Valara's fight, but he couldn't help feeling useless. He had to do something. In a moment of clarity, he spotted the small device Valara had set up earlier. The one that had created the energy shield when the Dravari first attacked. He ran toward it, his hands trembling as he activated the device. A brilliant light filled the clearing as the energy shield flickered to life. The Dravari faltered for just a moment, distracted by the sudden surge of power. That was all Valara needed. With a final, decisive move, she drove her staff deep into the creature's chest, its body falling limp to the ground. The battle was over. Valara stood, breathing heavily, her eyes scanning the fallen Dravari for any signs of movement. When she was sure the danger had passed, she turned to Marin. "We did it," she said, her voice soft but filled with relief. "But we're not safe yet." Marin nodded, his heart still pounding in his chest. The fight had been won, but they both knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. The forest was still, the sounds of battle fading into the distance. The last Dravari lay motionless on the ground, its body twisted in defeat. Valara stood over the fallen creatures, her breath still heavy but steady. She had fought with everything. She had, and now, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was silence. Maren approached cautiously, his mind still racing from the events that had unfolded. He had seen things he couldn't fully comprehend. Alien creatures, advanced technology, and Valara, a woman who was more than human. He felt the weight of it all press down on him, but there was no time to process it. The fight wasn't over. Is it really over? Maren asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Valara turned to him, her expression softening for the first time in what seemed like ages. She nodded slowly, though her eyes still carried the sharpness of someone who knew the war was far from finished. For now, she said, but the Dravari will return. They won't stop until they have what they want. Maren swallowed hard, his thoughts racing. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. One moment, he was a man living a normal life, and the next, he was caught in a battle between worlds, trying to protect a child he didn't fully understand. Yet, despite everything, he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of purpose. "I don't know what's coming next," he said, "but I want to help. I want to do whatever it takes to keep this child safe." Valara looked at him, her gaze searching, as though weighing his words. Then she gave a small nod. "I know you do," she said quietly, "and that's why you're here. But this fight, it's bigger than both of us. The child is the key. The Dravari know that, and so do we." Maren was silent for a long moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had thought that by defeating the Dravari here they had won, but now he understood. The child born of human blood was not just important to him, it was important to the entire future of Earth. "We can't do this alone," Valara continued. "We need to find others who can help. Allies. People who understand what's at stake." Maren nodded. The future of Earth was in their hands, but they couldn't face the Dravari alone. It would take a united front to protect the child, to prevent the Dravari from using it for their own destructive purposes. But as Valara looked around the clearing, she knew there was more to consider. The Dravari were relentless, and no matter how many times they were defeated, they would return. They had already proven that they would stop at nothing to achieve their goal. "The facility I spoke of," Valara said, her voice steady. "It's a place where we can regroup, where we can prepare for what's coming. We need to go there now, while we still have a chance." Maren's mind raced. The hidden facility, the place Valara had mentioned so many times. It was their last hope, the one place they could go to regroup and plan their next move. "We'll leave at first light," Maren said, determination growing inside him. "We'll get there. We'll protect the child. We'll stop the Dravari." Valara gave him a small smile. It was rare, and it was filled with the weight of everything they had been through. "I believe you, Maren, but remember, this isn't just about fighting. It's about survival. About saving humanity. About protecting the future." Maren nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. It wasn't just the Dravari they were fighting, it was everything they had ever known, their way of life, their planet, their very future. The child was the key, and he had to protect it no matter the cost. As the night grew darker, the two of them gathered their things and began the long journey to the hidden facility. They moved quietly through the forest, their steps steady and purposeful. The path ahead was uncertain, but they knew one thing for sure. The battle was far from over, and the future of Earth depended on them. Maren glanced over at Valara, who walked beside him, her pace unwavering. She was not just a survivor. She was a warrior, a protector, and with her, he knew they could face whatever came next. The stars above twinkled brightly in the clear sky, as if offering them some measure of hope. They were not alone, not entirely. They had each other and they had the child, and as long as they had that, they had a chance. They walked on through the night, their steps echoing in the quiet forest, ready to face whatever the future held.